Come take a seat.
Yeah.
We're just going to go live.
We're just going live, but that isn't, don't let that stop you from
Are you coming up, Jacob?
getting into
I
hot
wasn't
seat.
going to.
That's at the
If I can avoid it.
He's wearing two casual outfits today.
Oh, it's coming.
Live. We're live? Right. Okay, so we're here today for an information session on Glendowie Road and Interest Road. Team, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. We've come back to you following our, was it August 12th decision meeting that was tabled. Following that meeting, we were asked to meet with community members and look at other options for the design specifically, mostly on Glendowie Road. From what we understood, most people were happy with Idris Road. If you want to click on for the... So this is just to run through what we've done since that August 12th meeting. So obviously, first meeting was August 12th, where the report was tabled. 24th of September, a response was provided to the community board with a lot of the technical details of other options that can be considered. 25th of September, we had a meeting with many members of the community to discuss some of the options that we mentioned in the memo and to understand what they were wanting from our design. The 20th of February, we sent an email to the community board advisor with the results of our high-level assessment that was done by our landscape team and our, what do you call them, transport design team. And 26th of February, that same email was circulated to the community group that we met with. And then 7th of March, we had a very small meeting with some of those people from that community group just to run through our updated design and see if they were happy with it and get a little bit more feedback. So now we're coming to you for some guidance, I guess, on where to go next. If you want to flick, yeah, so there's Idris Road. That's the option that was presented at the August 12th meeting. We have not made any changes to Idris Road, as we understand from the community board that you're generally happy with the layout on Idris. So we're still looking at putting in cycle lanes and 2 pedestrian refuges. The high level cost estimate we've got for Idris Road was $197,000, but I have to emphasise that's really high level, so you know, I can't sort of pass to that. So we kind of wanted to, since Idris everyone seemed fairly happy with, we moved on to sort of Glendowie Road. That's the next slide.
So following that meeting where the report was tabled, we took the time to work with GESA, the local residents association, and then the 2 submitters who included alternative scheme designs as part of their submission. You provided us with a list of kind of priorities you'd like within that the new scheme design, and I can confirm that from working with them, their priorities were really looking at a scheme to retain additional parking, including the potential removal of cycle lanes, which was also in your decision, your resolution, and improving amenity through landscaping. So trees were a hot topic. Lauren will speak to the alternative design. However, but unfortunately the biggest constraint in providing a deliverable scheme in alignment with their priorities was budget. And also just to note from an engagement perspective, these were just the views of a few stakeholders that we were working with within the street and not the entire pool of submitters. So there is risk of going down a path that is just a small pool of views rather than everyone.
So for this design, our landscape team were first asked to go away and look at what trees they could put in if we took out cycle lanes. When they first came back to us, they could fit in, I think it was 11 trees. And then that layout was given to our transport designers to check that there were no safety concerns or accessibility concerns with putting trees in certain locations. And I think some trees were then taken out as they impacted turning movements. And this is, when I say this is what trees we can put in, it's to do with services. We just don't have a lot of space where there are not conflicting services. So The design that's come out is what you can see on the screen, where we have 9 potential additional trees with 6 in planters and 3 in the berm, and then 5 additional planters with low level planting, like up to a metre high or less. And then the high level cost estimate we got for that was 317,000. I think at the meeting we had with Lisa, we accidentally, when we got the pricing, I didn't realise it didn't include IDRIS. And so I'd sort of indicated we could possibly construct it with our current budget, but once we added an IDRIS, it looks like we're actually going to be significantly over budget. So, and that pricing doesn't include investigation work, because again, it's very high level, but we have built in a fairly hefty contingency. So, and as you can see, we've still got the pedestrian refuge and speed bumps and things. So, we took into account a few comments from a resident at, I think it's 1A or one on the corner of Fendalton Road and Glandovey. He just had some concerns around no stopping lines outside his house, so we've retained parking there for him. So, so I guess if you go to the next slide. So that's a summary of how much budget we have, 874,000. That was the total we had. Spent to date, $360,000. So we have about 514,000 remaining. And with it, so if you look at the cost of the Glandovey updated layout and Idris Road, we're projecting a shortfall of $243,000 or 244 really. So what we really want to get from you is perhaps some understanding of where you see this project going, what we anticipate would come back to you with another decision report at some time, but we just want to get an understanding of what your priorities are. We kind of, I think we were leaning towards coming back with a decision of, on Glandovey, we provide the pedestrian refuges only, and the cycle lanes on Idris Road. And then the trees may be something the community board may wish to pursue in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much for all the work that's been done on that so far. Fendalton team, your patch.
Yeah,
Questions?
thank you so much for the saga. I always laugh every time because I think they're the most aptly named community group. But anyway, I guess my concern from it really is that the clear feedback from the community and why we're here is that they just feel that it desperately needs more trees and traffic calming. So I'm a bit concerned when we get to this point and on the chopping block is the trees and the traffic calming, because I think that that's just probably the worst path that we could go down, and it just completely misses the mark in terms of meeting the needs of the community and the expectations from them. I guess my questions are, what has that 360k been used for so far? Because that's quite a significant amount.
Well, so I'm quite new to this project, relatively new. It has been going for quite a while. I think there's been parking surveys, a few parking surveys, a reasonable amount of consultation previously, a lot of design work.
Surveys and stuff.
Surveys, yeah.
We've had 4 designs on this so far, haven't we? I think.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So existing designs and stuff like that. But I think their concerns will be, and that we get there and go, we don't have enough money in the pot because we've spent 360 so far, and they're like, great, if you just listen to us in the first place. And I understand that's not fair, but it's the truth is that that's kind of what their feedback's going to be, and then it's hard for us to defend and go, yeah, I know we got it wrong a couple of times, and we've had to go back to the drawing board. Does that include Vinnie's funding for the trees?
No, we've been.
Oh, okay. Well, so that's, I can't, was that 150?
22,000. We just looked it up before we came up.
Oh, okay. So that's 92 that we can bank on.
Yeah.
Then to be fair.
It's whether or not, so if we were to present a report to you at your next decision that was the scheme kind of as is, so the pedestrian refuges and kind of bare bones on Glandovey and cycle lanes, etc. on Idris, we could also ask Brooksfield if they would like to present on their tree plan. It's whether or not the locations that we've identified where they'd like. So we did a desktop exercise on if we weren't to get into services where trees would work. And they were pretty concentrated in certain areas, right?
Yeah.
So we could have that discussion offline.
They can only go where they can go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
But the truth is, we obviously couldn't use that 92,000 or kind donation from Vinnie for anything other than the trees, obviously. So I guess the question is, for those 9 trees, what's the cost of the trees?
The actual, just the trees
The
themselves.
trees themselves.
I looked at it, it was only like $3,000.
The trees.
But that's not installation, that is just the trees.
Okay.
He made his offer based on the cost of the trees that were put in on Hereford Street,
Okay.
all inclusive, I believe, but
Yeah.
including installation.
Yeah.
And it could be slightly different on.
Well, if we can find out the cost of the trees and the installation and everything like that, I think there's a fair argument.
And the planter boxes and absolutely everything to do with the
Boxes.
cost involved with
I mean,
the place where the trees are going.
Yeah.
yeah. So that
Squeeze it in there.
could be a significant chunk that we could
Yeah,
utilise.
we've had, I'd just add, we've had offers for external funding before, and they've come with conditions that council isn't willing to take on. So, I mean, at the moment, obviously, we've not got to a point where we're signing up to anything, but we should bear that in mind, that it may come with conditions that we don't like.
Yeah, they're reasonably reasonable.
Yeah, oh no, I'm not saying, I'm not making a judgment on them, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
we sometimes just need to be a little bit careful with these kind of things.
I appreciate that. I think that just the 3 things that I would really say then around it is kind of the non-negotiables, purely from my perspective, and it's not based on my opinion, it's just from dealing with this saga, for lack of a better word, and maybe it's the right word, for quite some time. It is that kind of the non-negotiables from the community's view and what they are expecting from us is a scheme that calms the traffic, that has more trees, and thirdly, and I think this is massive for council, is to be perceived to take up that offer when there's external funding coming in. I think from a reputation point of view, we should grab that with open arms, because so often, I've lost count of how many times I've heard of offers that for whatever reason, the Art Gallery, for example, March Construction offered to do the foundation with no strings attached. It was just the bureaucracy of it, allegedly. There's obviously 2 sides of the story. That was never taken up. So there's always this perception that these people talk and people listen to them to say that they were offering, essentially $90,000 for the trees. And if we didn't do it, I actually think that it would do more harm than good reputationally for council to not find a way to be able to accept the money.
I mean, we do with a lot of developers, we do come up with cost share agreements for things that benefit the network while at the same time benefit the.
Often,
Yeah.
and you don't hear the good news stories.
No, you don't.
I
Yeah.
definitely don't, and they don't tell every man and his dog the good news stories. But I just reckon if there is a way that we can try and find a way to take the money, so to speak, that it's actually.
Would they, do you think the design that's been presented will satisfy them? Because like
I
Hannah
have
said,
no
the
idea.
trees are sort of quite concentrated in one area, and then there's other areas, there's none really we can fit in.
Has that been circulated?
We have,
Yeah.
yes.
What
So-
would that be?
The meeting that we had where we took their feedback on board and created a desktop exercise with the trees, they were unable to attend, but they were shared with them, and I believe, I'm gonna double check the email that was sent back, but seemed okay with it. It was just,
So they were comfortable enough with it.
yeah,
And
it's just
and
how
there's
we
9
kind of
of
go
them.
ahead it.
It's kind of like, obviously, the outcome is great, and I think that where you're going with this is really positive. But from a purely selfish political kind of point of view, I don't want council to end up, being the victim of or the recipient of a spray from the community for this more than we need it to happen. So it's kind of like a risk mitigation from my perspective. And the truth is, community board is wanting to be responsive with the community, and there's an issue there. We want to work hand in glove with them. So my initial reaction is that I felt that 9 would be seen as they might think we've missed the mark with that.
How many trees are there down there at the moment? We know the number?
Flip back to the plan, it does show existing trees as well.
Because if we could talk about percentage increases as opposed to raw numbers, if those percentages are healthy, that might be a better story to tell. We managed to increase the trees by 30% down there or something, as opposed to 9 trees or 6 trees or whatever the number is. But if it's a drop in the bucket, then it's not going to help either way.
There's quite a lot on private land that hang over
Yeah.
the footpath, aren't they? So they're not council trees, but they still shape the footpaths.
Totally. But the planter box is a mechanism to utilise the philanthropic funding, and it doesn't impact the underground services?
Well, it depends where you put them. Some of them do. There
Some
are
of
still
them do.
services, yeah. So that's why we've been limited to where we can even put those plants. See, some of them are in this where the cyclanes were. That's where we can put it. We think we still need to do some more testing, but we think we can put it without affecting services. But at other ends, there are still services there, so we can't even put trees there.
And then I just wonder, wouldn't we be? I would have imagined the cycle lane would have been a large component of the initial design in terms of the budget. So with the removal of that, doesn't that?
I don't think it was
unlock?
because it's primarily paint surfacing. You're not
There
digging
wasn't
into
a lot of
anything.
build out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, as a typical politician, I'm happy when the community's happy. So those are probably just the red flags from me, is that I have a sense that maybe that planting might not be seen as enough. We can do our best and we'll work with you and support you to say, hey, we can only do what we can do. But the optics of it is I think we've got to be able to come to the party somehow and get creative around how we could incorporate, greater greenery where possible. But then, the key things were really trees and traffic calming. So I just sort of worry if some of the other aspects are probably not reflecting the priorities of that community.
So when you say traffic calming, would you consider the pedestrian refuges to be part of that?
I do think so. That I think the concern they have is that it's the volume of traffic and the size of some of those trucks. But I think that with those pedestrian build outs and stuff like that. But even you could possibly even sacrifice one of the I know this is the wrong word to use, but the judder bars, because as long as they're sort of at either end of them, that's probably going to deter those larger vehicles. I'm thinking if we try to.
Is this for cost saving or for just?
Full cost saving.
I'm not sure. I have to.
Are they not that expensive?
I don't know. I wouldn't imagine that expensive, but.
So where's the real cost then?
Yeah, it was going to be good to get a little bit more of an understanding.
So if the things that we've sort of talked about are not the costly items,
Where's the money going?
where's the rest of the money going? Is there a breakdown?
I've got a breakdown, but I don't, again, I don't know if you wanna, this one's just for Glandoving. If you wanted to have a quick look.
Because I guess the other item was that
What's a lot of detail.
I just kind of ended up being a byproduct of the geezer group was saying their main focus is really the Glandoving West part of it. And I think we're taking the approach of kind of while you're at it, there are some concerns with Idris as well.
Yeah.
So I just think that, reputationally in terms of us being responsive to them, I don't know if we go down that way to say, and when we're blowing a lot of the budget on your sort of B priority.
Yeah.
Bridget?
Yeah, I had, okay, this is a bit of a random one, but the trees and the connection with trees, is there any way that we can also be feeding that into the tree plan, the council tree plan?
The canopy coverage.
That's what I mean, yeah. Is there any leverage that we can use?
For a funding sort of thing.
Yeah.
That might be a new question.
Actually,
Funding of the trees isn't going to be the issue though, because I think
Yeah.
we can do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it seems like
finding spaces for
It's
them.
finding spaces.
Yeah.
Okay, the other is sort of like a comment, but if there's an issue about whether or not there aren't enough trees, because it's also about improving, obviously, traffic, the immunity, right? Is there a way, and again, don't want to, because it sounds like a lot of the budget has been spent on design, so we want to be putting the money where the result is, not the design part. But I am curious, is there a cheap way where we can see what this would look like, where the trees are, like a more visual detail?
Like a rendered sort of.
Yeah, to actually see what these trees would look like in this, in the season where there's full coverage, because that can sometimes, make people think, oh, okay, if we're not going to get, 20 or 12, but this is what 9 looks like, and it actually does create a bit of a.
There are people
change.
at council who can do that, but I guess everything comes with time. And
Yeah.
cost. So if you wanted that, they could do it.
And
Yeah.
if this is all, sorry, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. If this is the amount that we can fit in, full stop, then maybe just spending the money that way and having a full stop, like there's no other options, therefore this is the best we can do, might
Right,
be,
yeah.
I get the point, but in
Yeah.
terms of cost saving.
Yeah, yeah. Again, don't wanna take that as an action if it's going to cost a lot, but I guess we won't know. Because so again, kind of coming back to James's point, sorry if I've already answered this, but this design has been put to the community yet? Or is it
Not
to
to
us?
the full community.
Okay, right.
So we've just been working with Giza, Brooksfield,
Yeah.
and yeah. Yes. But what we can do is take this scheme, see if Brooksfield would be willing to cover the tree portion of it. And then that be the decision that's brought to you.
All right, sorry, one more question. Coming back to that point about what a rendering would look like how much time would that cost? Would that
No, it's not something else.
Yeah.
would it be, I don't know, like a few hours of someone's time?
Probably, yeah.
I just feel like if it,
I wouldn't have thought it'd be a huge cost.
right, if it isn't gonna be huge, and if it could be the difference of actually helping someone see what this could look like and changing someone's mind, but actually the ambience of the street would look really great, because I'm sorry, but when I see these circles.
I mean, they're engineering drawings, aren't they? I mean, that's the thing, yeah. Yeah, no, I get that.
You're not gonna convince the community.
Yeah,
with us,
the
that's-
type of
that's hard.
tree. So I just feel like you wanna put that on the table if especially coming back to that theme about, bringing the community along so they can actually say, oh, wow, like real thought and design and heart has gone into this concept.
Yeah.
That would just be my feedback.
Yeah, I mean, and a tree isn't always the same as another tree, if you know what I mean, so you get huge trees and tiny trees. So we can go away and look at that. I don't think it'd be huge cost.
No,
We'll go
probably
and
not.
find out if it's
Only
reasonably
if it's, like,
sensible, we'll
minimal.
we can do it, yeah.
Another
Cost
third
like
of
that.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a couple of hundred thousand we'll be working on.
That's what is Bridget.
Yes.
That's me, yeah, I'm
Um,
done.
Because it does seem like from the Idris Road end, there's a good amount, like the trees and the traffic coming, it feels like people would be happy with that section, and there's a little bit more definitely at the Fendalton Road end, but it's the middle portion of it where it seems a bit light, but I guess the two ends with trees and traffic calming, if it's focused on the two ends, and it's a little bit lighter middle, hopefully that helps to provide that cue and I guess somewhat of a deterrence for people to enter the road full stop potentially, but it's just an observation. David, any?
Yeah, I'm looking at it and I'm also seeing that some of the trees are actually more on Fendalton Road than actually on Glendover Road. So, potentially we're missing the mark on that as well.
Well, I guess it's like if the cost that was it Brooksfield?
So is that two of those trees on Fendalton Road?
Or so potentially like depending what the total cost of the build out of all that was, if that was more than the amount that was being considered by those guys, then you just strip the Fendalton Road ones out and try and bring the cost down a little bit more again, right?
Yeah, but then we lose the total number.
What other workers there on Fendalton Road?
Pardon?
The orange bits on Fendalton Road, is that
Yeah,
additional?
yeah.
They're already there.
That's
That's
those
not,
bits already.
nothing else is happening on Fendalton Road.
No.
So are those 4 trees, I missed that David's just said, 4 trees on Fendalton Road, is that being counted as the 9 potential trees?
I don't think we counted those, did we?
Because they're
I don't
not
think
I
counted.
thought they were part of the
No.
original scheme because we're
We just-
removing one at the corner and you've got to replace 2 with
Take one
one.
out, yeah.
But I guess like why
Yeah,
even
I
spend
can
any
see
money
that.
on that when the issue isn't coming from
They're
Fendalton Road?
potential trees.
I'm sure we
Any
can-
other one? Oh, sorry, you go, Suresh.
Quick question, mathematical question. When you showed the previous slide, if you can go back one. So it was 197.
Yeah.
So 200K. The next slide was 317, so 190 something, so about 500 something.
And 14 and 65.
But
Yeah, and
they're
then
excluding
when
all the
you went to the
design,
next slide,
yeah.
so I didn't understand so when I looked at the available funds 514, before reading what's written below that, I thought, oh, the first 2 slides, cost so much.
They're just the construction and they're very,
So
very
those
high
numbers
level.
mean nothing then.
No, they're not, they're just the construction costs, and then we have to add all the contingency, the design costs, all the further testing, all that sort of stuff. All the unknowns, so they're just the real basic costs we got for construction from the designers.
So in the whole scheme of things, they mean nothing.
They're a good base.
They're a portion of the cost,
Yeah.
yeah, I think.
So the cost really blows up from there. So
Yeah.
500 becomes 1,000,000.1.
Yeah, it may not be there. I mean, I know that it looks like it's accurate because it's not been rounded. I just tried to do that because that's what was in our system. But I mean, we've had to put on quite a big contingency because there's a lot of unknowns. It's very high level. It may be less, but we just, at this point, we can't say it is, so.
So there's actually a fair chance, well, let's say there's potentially a fair chance that by the time you factor in any potential donation to cover the cost of the trees, and if you guys manage to squeeze the budget and actually get it inside of the contingency, you could actually get reasonably close to the available budget.
You could, I mean, the thing with
it's not
contingency is it's the unknown unknowns, and I mean,
How often
anyone
do you
who's worked on a
guys-
project will
how
know
often do
that
you
you
guys never need a contingency.
well, exactly. I mean, the number of times we put in 25% and needed 40, and equally there are many times when we put in 25 and needed 10. And so you never know until you get there. But we put that in because that's a reasonable guess at what we'll find when we get there.
Any,
So when you do the tendering for this, is it like a fixed cost, or are you, is it just cost plus?
No, this won't be cost plus. This will be done on
A fixed
it
contract?
won't be fixed price. It'll be they'll supply rates, and then however many of those, that's what we pay for. That's how we normally do contracts like this. I don't know. We haven't done I don't think we've done a procurement plan for this. I don't remember seeing it, but that's how we normally do these kind of jobs.
Because I'd look at that and go, okay, well, if it's a fixed cost, great, they're taking the risk, you nail down the number. But if it's cost plus, then, you know, you've got to be able to figure out what the risks are and what the cost of those risks are. And you might have a go, no go type thing. So, you know, you start at either end, go to the centre, and if you don't get, you're going to blow your budget, you stop it. And you just literally got you got your bookmarks, which will achieve the objective of through traffic. It'll calm, so we get a tick in the box. Is it? Because then there's guaranteed no overspend.
So you wanted to look at options for constructing each end of the.
I'm just trying to think of a pragmatic way in which we don't waste a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so I note there that 360k spent to date out of the 1.1, or let's call it 1.2, is roughly 25% already, and our contingency is 25. And I'm going, oh, you know, that's a big chunk of the money. If you and guarantee there's that 360k, I mean, that's probably still going to be closer to 4 by the time we've actually got real drawings and bits and pieces, probably even closer to 420 by the time you've got those sort of things done. And so you're almost at 50% of your budget. It just seems really, really tough.
James?
Just, so I agree with everything that's been said so far, but in terms of the numbers, let's say that the shortfall is 244k. If there's 92,000 that we can portion from Vinnie for the trees, that brings it down to 152,000 remaining, which, you know, is not insurmountable. And then the only other things that I could think of initially here is but there's really not an issue with the Fendalton Road or Idris, really. Like this hasn't originated from Idris Road. The concern of the Geezer group is the landowning part of the Geezer one, and the key people on board, you know, would be Geezer, the people at 1A, and Vinnie. And if they're on board, the rest of them are all going to come along. So I don't think there's any need to go out to the wider community, because if they're sort of keep happy with that, I think that can get us through. So accepting that there's probably a shortfall after Vinnie's contribution is 152,000. I wonder what that would look like then if we omitted the 4 trees that are there for and the work associated with it for Fendalton Road, because no one's asked for that anyway. It's nice, like if money wasn't an issue, then we'd say we'd do it. And then even Idris Road, there hasn't been a resident banging down the door from Idris Road saying we need this done. It's been the Geezer group saying you need to do Glendover, and by the way, there's some issues with Idris too. So I almost wonder then what it would look, at least to look at it and say, well, what happens if we didn't do the work on Idris? What happens if we didn't do the work on Fendalton Road? And then in terms of the raised platforms, if we just retained the east raised platform of Glendover at the Idris entrance and the raised platform at the west side at Fendalton, that kind of achieves the goal of deterring people from entering that portion of Glendover Road. Where does the figure end up looking with that? And I would, you know, you'd know better than me, but I'd imagine it would make a fair dent on
Yeah.
on that.
It would be good to have that as an option. In the
Yeah, I mean,
decision.
that's really what we're looking for. I don't want to give you hundreds of options. I don't want to give you options that you don't want. So it's trying to get to.
And I'm also, I apologise because I'm the last person that wants to ever jump at a solution or pretend that I'm an expert. You guys are the experts and I trust you and really appreciate, you know, what you bring to this. But I guess why I'm kind of spitballing those, you know, what the end might look like is just because we're having like a really honest kind of workshop on it. And it's just an idea that I thought might get us closer.
The community would
Yeah.
like, the community would appreciate seeing that as an option.
Yeah.
As well, like that's, because someone would ask, oh, why didn't we consider this? Or why didn't we consider that? Like, you just front running what they would come up with there, James.
Well, I'm just finding a way
good.
to where we can achieve the maximum.
Back.
Yeah, ultimately, what are they wanting out of it? You know, and that was the traffic calming, the trees and all that sort of stuff on Glendover Road. So knowing that we've got about 244 short, if we can maximise the 92 from Vinnie and we can apportion it to the trees on Glendover Road, then that 92 is pretty dependable. Bringing it down to 152, then say, let's remove the work from Fendalton Road from this, remove the work from Idris Road from it, and then get rid of the raised platforms beyond the Fendalton entrance and Idris entrance.
Yeah.
What do you call it?
Pedestrian refuge.
Yeah.
I'm just suggesting at the Glendover
Oh,
and
yeah.
Idris one.
Right.
Look,
Two
if
or
you,
three.
if you stop the Idris stuff for now, that would pretty much bring you on budget.
That's what I
Anyway,
suspect.
just there.
Look, even if we sold it that we're going to do this as a first cut, and then we can.
That's
look
stage
at
one.
this
That's a really good idea.
as a stage two, and it's just about staggering funding
Deferral.
constraints. And I think it's really defendable to say, well, where's the pressure point coming? Is the greater pressure coming from Glendover, or is the greater pressure coming from Idris? And the truth is, it's coming from Glendover. So it's not saying this is, you know, cut forever, but stage one or the greater priority was the Glendover, and then
Yeah.
we can still look with all the work that has been done isn't wasted. It's still there, and we can look to it in future years. I'm just thinking out loud, I guess, in a way that we could potentially get there.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to note down options then. So the options, I think we'll put forward the full scheme that's kind of up there, the whole lot. Effectively a Glendover only
Yeah.
option. What else do you want?
And that was removing the trees on Fendalton as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah.
Glendover
Yeah.
kind of gateway treatment, almost gateway and trees, kind of, for want of a better term.
But there's probably, and again, you know better than me, but I suspect there's possibly like 10,000 or something like that, 10, 15, maybe all up or something for that, do you think? I don't know. But it all counts up.
Yeah.
Jacob, what's the point of putting up the full scheme option?
So,
if you don't have the money for it.
because you as a board can
Okay.
advocate to have more money put in. So we've had projects in the past, I mean, Linwood Village is a great example of that, where we came along and we said there's not enough money for this. And they approved it on the basis that it would need more money before it was constructed. And then they advocated, I mean, that was a bit of a weird one in the way they got the money, but they advocated for that and they got the money and it got built in full. But they wanted the full scheme, it's all or
Does
nothing.
it then require us to go to full council for funding through our annual plan? LTA,
Yes,
stuff like
exactly,
that?
yeah.
It's reprioritisation of other transport budget. all that
Yeah,
stuff.
or additional funding, I mean, then that comes down to whether
It's tricky though.
the councillors can convince the rest of council
Yeah,
that.
but
that's
also
the-
in saying that, I also think it's a bit disingenuous because we've gone through, you know, a hearing process. And the reason why they hadn't been submitting and everything there is I guess this group in the community thought that there was something in the pipeline for it. I actually think it would be a little bit unfair to use that annual plan process to kind of sneak that one in there. It would almost be
Would
fairer
have
to
to be
say,
next year.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
why I think a tidier thing is actually just make Idris stage 2 because it's not where the pressure is coming from.
Right.
So if we, you know, if we essentially then even omitted Idris Road just for now, then we can talk to the community next year and say, hey, is this prior? And then we can have that conversation around putting 200,000 or, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, or thereabouts, which, you know, isn't monstrous numbers. But I think that would be way easier to get across the line in an annual plan next year for IDRIS stage 2. And it kind of, I know it's not perfect, you want to do it all, but just being pragmatic about it.
So so I've written down a full scheme staged. So stage 1, stage 2, Glandover only, Glandover gateway, sort of gateway and trees. And are there any other options that you want us to put forward in the report?
The truth actually is that when you've got essentially 200,000 for IDRIS and a shortfall of 243 and an offer of Glandover trees from Vinnie of 92, by making IDRIS stage 2, that keeps it really simple. And I think we don't even need to get too creative about picking and choosing things. It's just worth saying, let's just break them into 2 projects. And we propose that Glandover goes ahead within budget, and IDRIS is now out of scope from this, but it's not killed. It
just remains subject to further funding. And so we'd write something into the resolutions that says one goes ahead and the other one.
And I think it's dependable with the community, because it actually, you know, are these live stream? Yep. So the things with you know, well, let's just be very frank about it. I think, you know, the truth is it's not IDRIS Road, we're not having our door beaten down from IDRIS Road residents on that. It would be lovely to do this, and we all would love to do everything, but I think they would also appreciate us being pragmatic and managing, you know, the ratepayer money appropriately and just being sensible about the phasing of it. So, you know, honestly, the feedback from the community is that the Glandover is the greater priority, and IDRIS still important, but it could probably, I guess, have to, you know, be looked at in the following year. But then we don't lose it, and we don't lose the work that's been done.
Roger, are you guys on alignment with James on that one? Does that make sense?
The design costs will already be come out of this. So in theory, it should just be a cut, drop, put in when it goes into the long term, if that's where we go.
I also, I quite like this, definitely support that stage approach, James. I think that's really clever. And also because this is a unique situation where you've got Vinnie prepared to pay for the trees. So, because I guess there is that concern. It's like, you know, this isn't us bankrolling, you know, the beautification of streets. This is a unique situation where you've got a party that's really keen to put their own investment into it. And so it's not like IDRIS is being left out because of that. It's because Glandover is in a unique situation where there are people who are ready to front that cost. So then use it as a phase 1, see how the changes are impacted, take the lessons and learnings from that, and then apply it to IDRIS. And then, I don't know, see what comes out of, see how if it is a success story, see what comes out for that second stage with IDRIS, having learned from
You know, deliver it without any contingency under budget, enough money to do IDRIS anyway.
But I think it's a lot easier still when we're looking at 200,000 for that. If that's a phase 2 or a stage 2, for us to be able to advocate at council for that as part of a second stage, I think is going to be easier than saying, hey, look, we need more money in the kitty for this to do it all.
Just one more question, and I'm really sorry, I feel like I've said this already, but Giza, what were their opinions of this?
They came back with some very minor, I think they were hoping Brooksfield would be at the meeting. So their comments were very minor. They wanted the stop signs changed to give way signs. They wanted something to do with the refuge to be moved one side of the intersection rather than the other side of the intersection. I think that was all they said at the time, because they were still wanting Brooksfield to come and give their view. So we didn't, that was the extent of their feedback.
Well, I feel like whatever comes to us at the board, like, you know, it would be good to have some of that tweaking, like to have what we need for Brooksfield to answer those questions, so we can then streamline that next stage.
Yes. But I think getting them on side in Giza is key. Like, these guys are, I know I joke about it every time, but they've been there forever. Like, a lot of these guys, you know, they know this area so well, and I think that local knowledge, you know, is just, I don't know, is really useful.
Absolutely. We really felt that when we've met with them.
And I guess the only thing is, when a few comments that they did make, we did check with our designers, and they said it goes against what they would do. the design sort of standards, so I think we can't really change the stop signs to give way signs, and then there were design reasons why the refuge was better in the location we've got it now, just a safety reason.
The problem people have, I don't know quite which one it was, but if you're driving up to an intersection and there's a crossing straight away, you're looking that way for traffic,
Yeah,
and you drive straight out into the refuge,
Yeah.
which is why we really try to put them on the right-hand side of intersections. The difference between give way and stops is usually to do with visibility, and that's usually what drives the difference between them. I don't know if that's the full reason, but that's
They should all be
normally the
boxes.
reason.
Have you explored the plant boxes too, like the ones that are around like the Papanui and, you know, Mirabel Mall area, where that doesn't actually seem to go into the ground there? Planters that are there, I don't think have got any of the tree actually going.
They're really high on maintenance because you have to water them manually.
Oh, right.
I mean, we've got the project manager from Gloucester Street here, and she said to pay for people to go around and water all the plants. So
Mirabel ones were dying.
Yeah. So they're not ideal. I mean, they're okay for hey, let's try or something, put a box in, but yeah, they're not a great long-term solution.
Well, that would be my suggestion, but that I think we made good progress. But I forget the gentleman's name who was at 1A, but I remember his feedback was really useful. Yeah, he was great.
He said he was happy with the.
Oh, that's great.
survey.
Yeah, well, look, if the Geezer group and Vinny and Brent, did you say, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think that is pretty representative of a lot of the feedback we had there. And my suggestion would be just essentially make Hydra stage 2, because I think we can advocate pretty strongly for that, but being responsive to where the greater need was. I think, you know, when there's funding pressures, you just go for the top priority first.
Okay.
No, that's great. I mean, we've got some options. We'll flesh those out. We'll come back with the report that has those 4 options, and see where we go from there.
Right, fantastic.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks, James. Thanks for taking the time.
Really
Thanks
helpful.
for your patience.
And a rendering.
Yeah.
I'm really draw it.
Yeah.
Because I'm really good at drawing.
Lynette's doing
You have
art
any-
classes, so I'll take her on it.
I can sit.
Sorry,
Don't ask me to draw.
don't do it.
It's embarrassing.
Thanks very
Draw a
much.
stick figure.
And with that, we draw close to the information session.